Little bit of context before I begin. I was born in Leeds, which is in Yorkshire, which is in the north of England. My father is from London, and my mother is a super Catholic Yorkshire lass, born and bred. So this is a huge culture clash. It's a bit like an agnostic Manhattanite marrying a fundamentalist Texan. I had a kind of confused childhood. Also, I was born the fourth of 5 girls. I won't bother you with all the names. The only 2 names you need to remember for tonight are my little sister Helena and my second oldest sister Carolyn. So this first piece, which lasts 6 minutes or thereabouts, is the story of how I got the name No Pants Griffith and stopped believing in fairies. When I was 3, I started Mrs. Podmore's nursery school. I loved that place. I'm not convinced they loved me. At the age of 3.5, I was boisterous, indefatigable, and convinced of my righteousness in all things. Every day I walked into Mrs. Podmore's as though I owned it. I owned 3 things in particular. First was the big white wooden rocking horse with real horsehair mane and brown leather tack. Depending on my mood, it was a shaggy Viking pony, a western pinto, or the Lord of the Manor's hunter. The smell of fresh paint, old horsehair, and child-worn leather, even now, makes me want to leap into the saddle, wave an imaginary sword, and bellow, "Follow me!" It was the most popular toy in the room, and it was mine. Unless Mrs. Podmore was there watching, of course, and then I had to share. The second thing that belonged to me was the rockaboat. This was a 2-person metal frame with canvas seats, combination of rocking chair and seesaw. The manufacturer billed it as untippable. It wasn't. If you had a partner in crime not afraid of getting hurt, if you could persuade her to let go of the central bar, and if you were willing to rock really hard, you could catapult her at the wall behind you. And then, when the frame, unbalanced, shot off the floor, you could laugh like a maniac while the whole thing turned turtle and tried to crush any fingers and toes left sticking out. It was enormous fun. My partner in this game was usually Ruth. It was Ruth who gave me the name No Pants Griffith. About the time I started nursery school, my mother went into the maternity hospital to have Helena. Dad was now in charge of getting me to nursery. He wasn't very good at it. For one thing, he sometimes forgot to check that I was wearing underwear. As a child, I believed in freedom in all things. Wearing underwear, or pants as we called them in Yorkshire, not knickers, not underpants, just pants. So you can imagine my confusion when I first came to this country and someone goes, "Like those pants?" Anyway, wearing underwear was a serious constraint, and so I sometimes didn't bother. Mum, knowing my ways, would check, but Dad, bless him, just hadn't considered such a thing. So one day, off I went to Mrs. Podmore's in my pretty green and white striped dress and no pants. And the first thing I did was get in that rockabout. Ruth climbs in opposite me. She stares, scandalized, and said, "You've got no pants!" I didn't know what to say. I rocked furiously. Clearly I'd contravened some important point of etiquette, but I was at a loss as to how to respond. So I rocked harder than I'd ever rocked before, flung her at the wall, and considered the problem solved. After her blood and tears had been dried and the wall wiped down, and sense made of her shrieking, "No pants! No pants! No pants!" I was taken into Mrs. Podmore's cosy little nook of an office and solemnly handed a pair of clean community underwear. When my father came to pick me up, Mrs. Podmore stood with him by the door, both hands thrust deep in her apron pocket, and talked to him enigmatically of young girls and their tendencies. By the time we'd left, he'd got the message, and I had my new nickname. Thankfully, children of that age have short attention spans. My nickname died a natural death. But a dozen years later, the first day of sixth form, a girl I didn't know stared at me and said, "My God, you're Nicola Griffith." It was Ruth. The third thing I owned at nursery was the airspace. I was easily excited. I liked to get others excited too. I loved to ask questions, shout out answers, pose problems, and generally goad the room into hysteria and mayhem. To combat my frenzies, Mrs. Podmore instituted quiet time. Sometimes it was a story, but one day, when we tried her patience to breaking point, she brought out the big gun, Tinkerbell. We all sat in a circle and shh, she said, shh. Do you hear that? And we listened and heard the faint tinkling of a faraway bell. It's Tinkerbell, the fairy, she said. Someone babbled excitedly. Shh. Tinkerbell only talks to very, very quiet children. And you could have heard a pin drop, and tinky tinky rink went the bell, and hang on, I thought, looking at her hand in her apron pocket. Hang on a minute. What's that in your pocket? I said. Shh, she said again, but a horrible suspicion was beginning to dawn on her. It's a bell, I shouted, and as I was being hustled off to the office by one of Mrs. Podmore's assistants, an even more terrible thought struck me. There's no such thing as fairies! After soothing the weeping youngsters, no such thing as fairies, Mrs. Podmore came into the office and regarded me for a while. Then she shook her head. What am I going to do with you? But I was too depressed to answer. If she'd been lying about Tinkerbell, then everyone was probably lying about the Tooth Fairy and Father Christmas. At the next quiet time, I was led to a table in the corner and presented with a rough booklet made of blank paper and bound in wallpaper. Here are crayons and pencils, she said. Make something. And so while the other children listened raptly to some nonsense about magic ponies, I set about the serious business of creating my first book. And actually I have a facsimile of it right here in this box. I'm going to my name. I'm going to show you a couple of pictures because I can't resist. This one, I can see a bonfire and fireworks. Bonfire in England is supposed to commemorate the foiling of the gunpowder plot by Guy Fawkes, and it's on the 5th of November, and everyone burns the guy on the fire. But you know what? That's just total bullshit. Bonfire Night really, I think, goes back to an Iron Age celebration, like 3,000 years old, where the year was divided into two, and there were huge ritual celebrations with fireworks, well, not fireworks, but with big fires, and lots of alcohol and food, and all the things that being warm and excited tend to lead to. But I think this drawing really is my first attempt to convey how something felt, to how it looked. It's really my first try at an art portal, at helping someone else feel what I've felt and see what I've seen. And I'm going to show you just one more picture, because it's the picture that where I got the title of this book. It's a nativity scene. Remember, super Catholic. And it's called "We Are Going to Have a Party." And here we have Mary and Joseph and baby Jesus. And in my mind, to me, here's Mary and Joseph, and they're going, "Whoa, look at that. Let's have a drink." And this is pretty much emblematic of my approach to life.